Michio Kaku said that the mind of God would be cosmic music resonating through 11-dimensional hyperspace. Hello everyone, my name is Vasif and I am your host for the podcast The AI Verse. Today we have with us Mr. Maaz Javed. Mr. Maaz Javed is one of the top 5 graduates of Karachi University's Software Engineering Division. He is a part of many local and international AI communities, and he has been working on numerous entrepreneurial ventures, and one of it is Exehen. Exehen is an AI R&D company, and Mr. Maaz Javed is one of the co-founders of Exehen, and he aims to skyrocket Exehen into oblivion. Mr. Maaz Javed, welcome to the AI Verse. How are you doing?
Thanks, Wasif. Thanks for inviting me, and thanks for the kind introduction.
Mr. Maaz Javed, we have this hint that you are the protagonist in the field of computer vision. When we talk about computer vision, we talk about the history of computer vision, the start in 1920s or 30s with the invention of the Turing machine, where humans knew that there is a need to recognize patterns in a series of events. There came the introduction of computer vision, automata, and stuff like that, and then it advanced all the way to pattern recognition and object manipulation and recognition, image manipulation and processing and stuff. So when we talk about computer vision, do we underestimate how hard a computer vision problem is?
Yeah, Wasif, certainly. In short, yes. And for the detailed explanation, I might refer to the past. And from the MIT proposal, they wrote about proposal in 1966, and that proposal called the Summer Vision Project, given to the students to solve that. And in that problem, we have encompasses the problem that we still works on today. So the problems are related to pattern recognition and object detection. So the most of the visual works we do, our brain do, is related to our unconscious or subconscious mind. And this effortlessness gives us the hint that the problem might be easy than it actually is. So, but when we refer to neuroscience and psychology, the fact is the most of our verbal cortex is devoted to do the visual perception and calculation. So I think that this effortlessness gives us the hint that the problem might be easy, but it isn't, because from the past decade, we progress a lot in computer vision.
That's good. Okay, so let's talk about facial recognition, one of the implementations of computer vision. Do you think that facial recognition is mostly, referred to as the key to our freedom, or the key to automation, or the lock on our freedom? See, as I've heard a lot that this facial recognition system is implemented a lot where people want to keep an eye on each other, where governments want to keep an eye on its citizens and publics. So what do you think? Do you think facial recognition is the key to automation or the lock on our freedom?
It actually developed to be the key to automation. But now we observe that it's a lock on our freedom. Recent example is of how Chinese government is doing that. So, but Chinese government actually implement a mass surveillance system throughout their country. But the other side of the coin is that the Chinese people allow their government and they trade off their privacy for public security. So they are united, and they actually support their government in this regard. And this is not a new concept for China. It's rooted from 1949 when Chinese got independence in 1949. So Mao Zedong was the founding father of People's Republic of China. And he created this concept, he developed this concept, and this concept was rooted back then. And at that time, technology was not that much advanced. So they rely on the transfer of information from one to another. So the people keep a watchful eye on each other and reported any unethical activity to their government.
I've also heard that this mass surveillance is also used to give this social rating number to each and every citizen called the citizens score. So how does that work?
Yeah, so all this mass surveillance is related to their social credit system. And that system actually rate a citizen based on their behavior. And the fast internet service and fast visa to Europe depends on their social credit number. So it's like they are in a video game. They are being rated for each and every activity. And this mass surveillance is not just by facial recognition systems, but also through internet and other devices.
See, we've seen this surveillance from other companies as well, like Facebook and other social media companies, when they are actually running these complex algorithms on your comments and your things you like and what you like to see on your news feed, how much you interact with certain posts, and what they're doing with all of this information is they're building your particular profile, which help them with targeted marketing. See, this is I don't know if it's my own hypothesis, but I believe that they're listening to us as well. I believe that from our microphones present in our phone, they are hearing our conversation right now, and they're listening to us talk, and they're certainly running some kind of algorithm and predicting what we want to see when we are done with this podcast on our phones. So I believe that this is not a good thing to do. This is a breach of privacy. This is because human rights advocates describe the measure as another step towards dystopian surveillance state. See, this concept is new for the world, but Chinese people are going through this. And as you said, that Chinese people have allowed their government to do this kind of stuff. So do you think if this system is implemented in any other part of the world, for example, Pakistan, if this system is implemented in Pakistan, so what will be the resulting feedback from the public in Pakistan?
I think the actual concept of why they are doing the mass surveillance in China, they actually following the concept of their founding father Mao Zedong. So I don't think Pakistan's ideology and as a nation our vision with the government follow this, that we require a mass surveillance on our citizens. So we can use this mass surveillance system both in a good way or a bad way. So but the point is here but the point here is that if we are doing the mass surveillance, it should be kept really real secret, because if a central government collect all your data, all your private data, actually they can be use it for some evil purposes.
Yeah, absolutely. The thing is, we as citizens have a choice. Either we go with the flow with what our government suggests us, or we could, do the other thing, or we could disobey. Like, for example, this CCTV footage or facial recognition system that they are using for whatever purposes. So what if we try to fool that system?
These systems are easy to hack.
So how does that work?
So For an image, you can multiply it with some perturbed vector, and it's called optical illusion for machine systems. For us, we as a human, we also experience optical illusions. So we can make this computer or machine believes that you are not here, you are disappear for the machine. So what we do when I talk about it technically, we multiply the original vector, which is the number of pixels. For example, if 5x5 image, so it's a 5x5 matrix. So we multiply it with some perturbed vector or number, and that number actually alters the pixel values. So I saw an image yesterday which shows the image of a panda with 57.7% confidence, and when it get multiplied with perturbed vector, it actually recognizes as something else, some another animal with 97% confidence. So it's easy to fool that because we train our facial recognition systems or image recognition systems in a perfect world data in a controlled manner, but the world is not like that. It's really different.
So basically, what you're trying to say is we can easily hack a convolutional neural network with the help of this. What's it called?
So it's called an adversarial effect, and so we input adversarial input into the system, and it produces an adversarial effect.
Oh, okay, that's good. So as we have discussed that adversarial effects can easily poison or harm a convolutional neural network that is used for image recognition. So let's talk about how accurate a CNN is when we talk about image recognition. I was actually looking at this article that some company has invented self-driving trucks. So how does a self-driving truck work?
So self-driving cars works in a way that we collect the data from the input sensors at every second, and that input gets into a neural network architecture. Tesla called it multi-headed architecture, and it's being connected on the backend. So they are doing the processing at every input and tells the driving car to do that action. And it's called tabula rasa supervised learning. I mean, they are collecting all the data at the same time. So tabula rasa is like it's called a blank slate, and it's in a way that the self-driving cars don't have a past data. We just feed the data and it learns only from that data, and it's really different from the real world. So in real world, we may encounter the novel problems that a self-driving car haven't seen yet.
Okay, so do you think the current architecture of the self-driving cars can excel, and we just require a lot, or we just require a lot more data to train it?
The current neural network architecture is designed in a way that it learns only from, as I mentioned, it's a tabula rasa learning in a supervised way. But that's not how human learns. Human don't learn only from that 30 days in a driving school. All of their past experiences from 0 to 18 years when they get into the driving school is actually define what action they take on the road. So at the age of 2, I think the child is visual genius. They actually define a repertoire of vision. They are visual geniuses. By the age of 16, they know how the dynamics of human and other object works. They know how about the physical laws. Yeah. they know what a skateboarder can do, or a cyclist, or for Pakistan a motorcyclist can do
Yeah, absolutely.
on the roads.
Yeah.
So there are two type of learning mechanism for the machines as well. The first way in a supervised way, and that's not how child learns. A supervised learning is just a small part of their learning. They learn in I can say that at the age of 2, they know that the world is 3-dimensional. They hold an object in their hands, for example a ball, and they rotate it, and they know from every direction how the ball behaves, and not just a static 2D image for the computer. So for example, a Tesla haven't seen any skateboarder doing a dive from the
Footpath.
footpath
side.
or the pedestrian, from the pedestrian bridge. So Tesla might be confused, but not because he haven't seen that pattern in his life ever, in its life ever. But for the human, it's easy to detect because this is not a novel problem for that. They already know how to behave on this type of situation.
Absolutely. So when we talk about self-driving cars, that is actually a ton of progress from where we are coming from, the concept of inventing a car to using eco-friendly fuels, and now to driverless cars. So what do you think the future would be of transportation?
The future for the highways, it's clear that we need self-driving cars, because humans are not a good resource for 24-hour continuous driving. So a company called TuSimple is working on a self-driving trucks on the highways.
Yeah.
And they are collecting the information from the sensors, but what they lack is cognitive reasoning, and that is what is connected to the emotional intelligence.
Absolutely, because I have this very strange question in my head, that if you are in a self-driving vehicle and ahead of you there is a car that is like not that much, a costly vehicle, and beside that you have a car that is very costly like a Lamborghini or a Rolls-Royce, and there is an accident 2 cars ahead of you, and you are unable to pull the brakes. The AI is confused, the AI is unable to pull such sudden brakes, and it is evident that you are going to hit the vehicle that is in front of you. So an AI would never understand who to hit actually, the Lamborghini or some less expensive vehicle. That basically that intuition comes from the human mind, because obviously that human has to bear the damages if that truck hits a Lamborghini.
But other parameters are also here. For example, how many persons are there on that car,
exactly,
and on that bike or a pedestrian, how much damage. So that's our decision human makes in real time. And machines fail to make that decision, and not with only with that data. Actually, machine learns to be in the real world and sense, not just with the static images, but be in the real world and experience itself, just like what a child do. They experience new concepts each and every day. They try new things. As an adult, they do more experiments. A child do more experiments and they learn from them. But in machines, we lack that confident to make the decisions.
Absolutely. Basically, the thing is, what machines lack right now are feelings, right? Which ultimately mean emotional intelligence. I was reading this interesting thing, in which Michio Kaku, one of the futurists, he said that the only thing which we lack as a civilization, excelling in artificial intelligence and robotics, is this emotional intelligence. So
yeah, Michio Kaku also refers to a Kardashev scale about how we are going to utilize the energy of our universe actually. So he described type 1 civilization that can use and manipulate the energy of the whole planet, the planet Earth, controlling the weather conditions and everything. And then the type 2 civilization, which is related to our Milky Way, our galaxy, controlling the whole planetary system and using all of their energy. And then the type 3 civilization, which actually controls the whole universe, the 100 billion stars and galaxies we saw from the Hubble telescope.
Exactly. So on this scale, where do you think us as a civilization lie on this particular scale?
We are not up to the type 1 civilization. We are lacking behind that. So according to Michio Kaku, we are at 0.7.
So what do you think will be this breakthrough in technology that we will reach, or we will become a type 1 civilization?
Internet technology is the one that can make us to, and that can give us the path to become the to become the type 1 civilization.
So as you said that we're currently at 0.7, and I believe that we can only reach the type 1 level when we're able to easily travel through our planetary system. Like Michio Kaku boldly suggested that time travel is very much possible. And what he said was we have this concept of consciousness, right? So what we will be able to do is we'll transfer our consciousness in some particular way from this planet to another planet, and there will be some kind of receiver on that other planet, and your consciousness will be transferred into some kind of a robot or a surrogate, and then you can travel or do stuff on that planet. And in that way, he said that time travel would be possible, because you're just reaching each planets in your solar system in in a matter of minutes and seconds and hours. Like you're having breakfast on Earth and you're having lunch on Mars, and then you're back home for dinner on Earth. So he was referring to this particular technology basically acting as a breakthrough for us becoming a type 1 civilization. Let's move on. When we talk about AI, when we talk about AI, we believe AI to perform one specific task that we have designed for it to do, right? So what do you think will be the state of AI after 10 years, for example?
So after 10 years, as when we're talking in the perspective of computer vision, so after 10 years, I see the world or us progressing in terms of video processing. Yeah. And after 10 years, we might develop a system that have a lot more data. And now we see that with more data, how a system performs.
So basically, we currently are working very hard to make this technology called quantum computing very much, frequent everywhere on the planet. It currently it being on Earth is in a very limited amount, very limited companies have this technology. But what if quantum computing is easily available, easily accessible for each and every one of us? So do you think we will progress in terms of AI when we have quantum computing?
The problem is we identified that we need to do more calculation as we have more sophisticated and complex neural network algorithms. We need more calculation and we need more data to train that. And all of this is possible with the quantum computing.
Exactly.
So it's right. We need that. But we need to improve our neural network architecture and not just rely on supervised learning, but let the machine learn in the real world, vendors here and there, and learn with the real life scenarios.
Absolutely. Okay, so I have a very fictional question. See, it's the year 3000, like 900 years into the future. What do you see the world? What does the surrounding world looks like?
So from the past data, we experience that from the tents or caves to build skyscraper buildings. In I think 900 years we built that, and we progress a lot in terms of technology. And now this is the point we explore that we can develop machines that can work similar to humans. In 1950, when Alan Turing in a seminal paper described the concept that machines can think like humans, and if they pass this Turing test, they can beat us in terms of calculation, in terms of intelligence. So in the year 3000, I might see that our intelligence is weaker than our machines.
And do you think, let's assume the worst possible scenario. Let's assume that we have these machines and robots and AIs that have marginally large IQ and intelligence than us humans. So what do you think will be the outcome of that? Do you think us machines and robots can live with each other in harmony, or we'll have to look for somewhere else to live and let the robots take over the world or something like that?
I just say a single sentence, that is, we may be slaves of the machines.
Do you think?
It's hard to predict what we do after 3000, but that is possible.
That is certainly possible. See, the thing is, what in my opinion, what we'll do is we'll have to surrender to these robots, and what they'll do to us is they'll make us leave this planet on to Mars, because I believe that by year 3000, Tesla and certainly other companies will be working towards this future of colonizing Mars, and will be forced to leave planet Earth towards Mars. So do you think we'll be able to start from scratch on Mars as a civilization?
Yeah. The Mars have some signs that the life may be possible there, but maybe there are some species living there already. I saw some video in the past week that there is a competition about building building a home or a house in the Mars. So they have some kind of material that we can use to build home or house on the Mars. So the work is in progress, and we might see a breakthrough in the next coming 10 years.
So as you said that there is this competition going on for building a humanly adaptable habitat on Mars. So do you think there are other planets in our universe that we can, build our homes over there as well?
Yeah, certainly it's possible, because we have 100 billion stars and 100 billion galaxies, and each star has a galaxy, planetary system around it. So 100 billion into 100 billion is a visionary number that we can't calculate.
Absolutely.
So it's possible that other planets might have life. It's certainly possible. So in 1990, when we get the first image of our planetary system, a famous astronomer called Carl Sagan write about our world, that what we are, and he write his most famous words. So I want to repeat that. Perfect. So the words are really interesting. So Carl Sagan said that, look again at that dot, that pale blue dot. That's here, that's home, that's us. On it, everyone you love, everyone you ever heard of, everyone who ever was lived out their lives, the aggregate of our joy and suffering, thousands of confident religions, ideologies, and economic doctrines. Every hero and coward, every creator and destroyer of the civilization, every king and peasant, every young couple in love, every mother and father, hopeful child, every teacher of morals, and every corrupt politician, child inventor and explorer, every saint and sinner in the history of our species lived there, in the mote of dust. So, as we compare ourselves to the other planetary system, we might suspect that our abilities are much lesser than what we can expect from other habitants that might live on other planets.
So what you're trying to say is you believe that aliens exist, right?
Some kind of species might exist on other planet, because it's certainly not possible that in a whole big universe we are just the only species that lived here.
Absolutely agree with what you said. I think that's a wrap from my side. And thank you so much, Mr. Maaz Javed, for joining us and dropping these insight bombs on us regarding computer vision and relevant phenomena. And I wish you skyrocketing success in your future endeavors. Thank you.
Thank you, Asif.